she would want to be part of. And tonight she is hosting the Principal Secretary, Broadcasting and Telecommunication, Professor Edward Kisengani, Engineer John Tanui, Principal Secretary, ICT and Digital Economy. We are also having nominated Member of Parliament, Umher Harun. And the floor is now yours, Regina. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Mchuma. That was well, indeed. That is what those are the persons we have on set. And we are outside. As we said, this is season 2. We are doing it better for better accountability and transparency where government policies are concerned and the taxpayers' coffers, so to speak. So tonight, ladies and gents, I hope you're enjoying the warm breeze in Nairobi here. We are literally outside. This is season 2. Can see you're all comfortable. No one is sweating. Yes. In case of a fire, we can all escape. Yeah. So karibuni sana, and thank you very much for your time. This is season 2. We're going to be opening our doors, or rather the shift is opening its doors to various stakeholders. And tonight we have the legislature engaging the executive to try and find out, has the bottom-up economic transformation agenda delivered? 2 years, 6 months in. We have just like 107 days to the next election. So has it delivered? This is the midterm score. And that's the question we've been asking tonight to our viewers. And the first question would be and is, how would you rate the government performance out of 10 and why? How would you rate the government's performance out of 10 and why? And the second question, we're seeking your feedback. What should the government focus on for the next 2 years and a half? That is 907 days to the next election. So has the government delivered on its pledges 2 years, 6 months in? Get us on X as well as our various social media platforms. Include where you're watching this particular show from. Hashtag is the shift. The second question is, what do you think government should prioritize before we hit 2027? What should the government prioritize or focus on before the next election? We are open to your feedback. Get us on X at KBC Channel 1. My handle is at Ray Manyara on X there. Now, let's have a feed of what Wanjiko had to say in regard to those two questions that are going to shape the conversation here tonight. This is some of the feedback that we have received from you, Wanjiko. Well, as that particular poll was ran today, and so far we are seeing that over 70% of Kenyans think that the government has not delivered on its pledges, while 23% of those who have tuned in and are watching the shift indicate that they have confidence that the government has delivered on its pledges. I have a panel here with me tonight, and I'd want to hear your views. Let's start off on the immediate left here. What do you think about that? Has government delivered 2 years in? PS Kisengani, start off. What's your take on that, and how would you rate the government?
Well, I think, thank you very much. I'm again privileged, as usual, to come to our national broadcaster, and in the company of this distinguished lady, who is also doing oversight on us, Umi, and of course my colleague, Engineer Tanui, who we work very closely with. Some people say we are twins. Yeah, but that is the nature of the job that the president gave us. So you have asked fundamental questions about whether the government has achieved. I think I was asked this question a couple of months back, how I rate the government. I think I gave ourselves about 6.
6 out of 10.
Yes, but I think today, as you ask this question at halftime, I think we have done 7.
7
yes.
out of 10.
Yes, I think it's 7 out of 10.
Why 7?
You see, I've seen that poll stuff, but you see, scientifically, we also have certain rules that guide a poll. And when you're doing it randomly, sometimes you miss certain specific areas that you really want to be judged on. So I don't know how the question was framed to them, but a general question like that, in a country, a democracy like Kenya, where there has been a lot of politics, there are people who just enjoy misinformation. It is sexy.
Okay.
There are others who just say, you know, I don't like the face of so and so. So even if they are doing something else that is good, I don't care.
Okay.
So there's a lot of misinformation around here, and the others listen to others. Where depending on which influencer is talking, then they say, okay, let's go by what you are saying. I think they have done nothing.
All right.
So there are quite a lot of pressure points.
Pressure points.
Yes,
we'll pick it up at that point.
So
7 out of 10 for you.
Yes, so I think, in general, I think if you talk about 7 out of 10, I'm thinking about 70%. It's a reverse thing. Okay. It's not 23.
Let's pick up. Let's pick up 7 out of 10.
Yes.
Engineer Tanu, you're in charge of ICT and the digital report. How do you rate the government's performance 2 years in on a scale of 1 to 10?
From where I sit, I would say I would rate it 8%, but in respect to the citizen, probably 6% is reasonable to them. Why? Because most of the things we've been doing is to lay foundation for the desired impacts that we've been communicating. We've been involved in planning in terms of setting up the recalls, in planning on really very transformational projects, which you talk of agriculture, huge initiatives there. We've talked about housing, huge initiative, legislations needed to be done. If you talk about housing, also an ambitious program, digital superhighway, very ambitious, requiring huge resources. A lot of groundwork has been done. Where we sit, we are seeing we have achieved 80% in terms of planning, in terms of getting resources, building the signage in government, working between us and the legislature, ensuring we have legislation. So that is where we are. The statistics that you see, our treasury and the monetary data that you see, Kenya is among in the best position. Inflation rate, what we import, balance of trade, security in food. So we have very good statistics. And where we sit in terms of now, Mwananchi, we promise public Wi-Fi. Maybe we've not reached where we want to be. We talk about connecting all public institutions. We've not reached where we want to be. Digital hubs, we committed, we've started, but we've not reached where we need to be. So on the citizen side, 6% is logical. And but
8 from where you sit.
But
so we can go with a median, 7 out of 10. Let's work with a median. 7 out of 10, 7 out of 10, a median. So as a legislator seated in this panel today, before we take that quick breather, Honorable Umi, are you convinced that the executive has delivered? You know, as an ODM member of parliament, are you convinced that they have delivered?
I like how you emphasize on the ODM bit, as if to trigger a certain response. But
well.
I'll be very objective.
All right.
And there are certain things that the president had promised. So I'll focus specifically on national government. If I'm to rate, including county governments, the score might go lower. So let me rate the national government in itself. I'll give it a 7. And I'll justify this because I come from the northern ASAL regions. We had a very pressuring issue that was the vetting, the IDs, and the abductions. We have seen significant improvement. There was a declaration that was made in Wajir to remove vetting. So that itself is a 10 for me. I would then shift my focus to the aspect of digital access, digital programs. We have never had an Ajira center in the entire region. For the first time, we have Jitume labs in the region. I think that's something. I would then look at education. We have significant work that has been done in school feeding. We have significant work that has been done on retention, transition. So looking at all those angles, those are like high ranking for me. Then there are sections like health, the shisha, which I think is still at a staggering level. There's still some improvements to be done. So cumulatively, I would give it a 10.
Cumulative?
I mean, sorry, 7. 7. I'll give it a 7.
So we're in consensus, 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
We'll pick it up from there. Remember, this is The Shift, and tonight we had posed 2 questions to you as the audience. How would you rate the government's performance in the last 2 years and a half, and why? Then what should government focus on now that you have 2 more years, 6 months to go before the next election? Get on X. Our handle is at KBC Channel 1. Mine is at Ray Manyara. We'll be awaiting your feedback. We'll be right back. You're watching The Shift. Before we took that quick breather, we had posed questions to you. How would you rate the government on a score of 1 to 10 in regard to its performance 2 months, 6 months in? And also, which areas do you think the government needs to focus on before we hit the next election? Before we took that particular break, my panel has unanimously agreed that they score the government's performance at 7 out of 10. They'll tell us why. What's your take? Get on X at KBC Channel 1. Now, some of you had given your views, and we had traversed various parts of the country, and this is what my colleague Abdullahi Ahmed had for you on ground. Let's have a listen.
2.5 years since President William Ruto's leadership, Kenya Kwanza bottom-up economic agenda has made many strides in many sectors. However, the balance of hope and disappointment continues to shape the public opinion. Join me as I engage with Kenyans.
I think for the last 2 years, we have seen a lot of stuff happening, and we've been asking ourselves as Kenyans, is these actions really intended for the common good of the mwananchi? But I think in terms of the opportunities that we have seen from the political angle, it's really been very exclusive. It's been gender blind, because we've not seen the place of women in this cabinet. We've not seen the place of women in this government.
This government ambayo government iko nao sasa hapa hivi, what I can say, improve kwa vitu mob sana kabisa. At first ilikuwa at low rate, but hiyo pressure mingi kuangalia kwa ground, unajua, because many zile gava zingine ziko zinatuma tu do aziangali ground, but sasa hii what I can say, kwa hii gava ya sasa hii wanaangalia ground.
Wakianza walianza vizuri, lakini sasa hii wamelegea. Ukiangalia pande ya chakula zimeraise juu sana, unaona. Sijui kama ni tax ama ni nini, bei ya chakula imepanda juu.
Mimi hapo naweza nalilia sana gava hapo manze, imetufinya sana manze. Inafaa iangalie huyu mwananchi anaumiaje, lakini for real tunaumia. Cha ukweli tunaumia. So ningomba vinya budget nenda kusoma hii budget ikienda kusoma hivi, at least uangalie upande wa tax manze.
Pata system hazifanyi kazi, tena unaambiwa uende nyumbani utegee urudi tena. Unajua sasa ugonjwa haiwezi goja hiyo wakati unaambiwa utegee.
Tuliambiwa mambo na bottom up. Na hii bottom up ilikuja kwa niaba tu ya uongozi. Haikuja kwa niaba ya wananchi. Kwa sababu tukiangalia ile uchumi vile mahali inaelekea na mahali watu wako saa hii, hakuna kitu inaendelea.
Well, that is what Wanjiku had to say in regard to government's performance. And I'll give my panel at least 10 seconds each to comment on what you've heard before we get the ball rolling. Let's start with you, PS Kisiangani.
I think the criticism that we get sometimes is overstretched. But wananchi have a right to ask questions, to expect, to raise the bar. And I don't think that what I've seen there is negative. Okay. They're just telling us, midterm, we think you have not done well. And then we don't come to the studio here to argue with wananchi. We come here to listen to wananchi. And when they say you have not done well in one area or another, we try to improve on it. So it's a good feedback.
It's good feedback. What do you think,
I think it's a good engagement with the wananchi, and some of the feedback is indeed to say some of the projects we've had are actually very transformative, but we are yet to close on some of them. The Mwananchi is yet to feel, especially money in the bucket, and I think those are the things now we are expecting in this 1 year and a half, that impact will be much significant now on the personal level.
Honorable Umi.
I think any feedback is good feedback, because if Mwananchi are able to praise government, then they might not know where to improve. The role of government is to ensure that every person is taken care of, taxpayers. Okay. So if the public feedback is that you're not doing your job, then it's good to go back to the drawing board to keep adjusting until you're able to get the positive feedback that you require.
I like that you're on that particular point, because now this is a midterm score. We have 907 days to go. So we start off with you, PS Kisiangani. Assuming this was an appraisal, what were the KPIs, and how would you say you have performed in those areas where you're mandated to?
Basically, we have an overall mandate in the ministry. We are in charge of the ICT sector and the communication. Engineer Tanui is doing the ICT and digital economy, but we are so interconnected. What probably what you don't know is that broadcasting and telecommunication has a fund you call the Universal Service Fund, which is also supporting the ICT projects, although it's in the broadcasting, but it's also supporting my colleague. But when we have issues around software and so on, actually he supports us a great deal. So there are many things which are interconnected, but at the departmental level, and I think across ministries, we came in and found that the human resource instruments were in a mess. And in fact, mobility upwards was difficult. So the first thing, we undertook reforms in line with the executive order of the president to make sure that we align with the bottom-up economic thinking. That has been done. In fact, he has recruited certain officers in strategic places. I will be doing that shortly because everything has been done. But there were other specific things like the national addressing system that they had stalled. Now we have moved, and we involved stakeholders working with the UN agencies. It is in advanced stage and it's going to be adopted very, very soon, because there are certain things that should be done legally before it is put in place. And that one will help Posta to get back on track. Okay. Because that means that we shall now know we can do last mile deliveries through the e-commerce strategy without any problems. We know where your home is. So there's quite a lot of progress in the national addressing system. But there are also, when we came in, the kicker regulations, the regulations that govern the industry and had expired. Now we have worked on those kicker regulations that are with Parliament, and they have the capacity to reform the sector in a very big way. And of course, at the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication, when we came in, they have this Eldoret campus. It didn't have a title either. There were a lot of quarrels. We have navigated through that. Now they are going to get a title for the Eldoret campus, and we shall have a lot of our students benefiting from that campus. So quite many things are happening, and I think you also know that there has been a lot of activity even at our own KBC here to make sure that we align management with the current trends in broadcasting. There have been issues of funding. Our corporation had been subjected to a legal matter in a foreign country. I went there and we did the arbitration, and we're hoping to get a positive response. And again, we have been supporting KBC. We now have a new managing director here who we think can now carry the dream, and with these distinguished workers, make sure that this is done. And you can see that where we are, even KBC and Posta, they have huge tracts of land. These are assets for KBC. When we came in, everybody could go and take that land and use it, even as a garage, use it for farming. We have completely cancelled the leases, and now all the land that belong to KBC except a few others which have been subject to contestation, all those assets have come back to KBC. So we can now decide how we can use them to do that. But above everything else, improvement of government communication. That is my job as the principal secretary in charge of broadcasting and telecommunication. Improvement of communication has been a challenge, but we have worked hard. Where we sit here, when we came in, there was no government communication policy. There was also no strategy. Today, we have that already done, and it is with the cabinet. The approvals will be done shortly. So I think we have done very well, but you can add that to training.
We will pick it up
and training. I think I should finish this. Training. Okay. We have done skills training to some of our communicators using the media council. A lot of things have happened. So we think we are on the right track.
Right track.
Yes.
We'll pick it up from there. We need to talk about communication. Now, you're in charge of ICT, Boniface Tanui. What would you say have been the challenges, in delivering on your promises mandated under your department?
First, one of the key points to note is that ICT and digital economy was put central in the delivery of the commitments by government. Each of the four other focus areas required technology to be able to deliver. And to put this infrastructure in place, it required huge resources. And as my colleague, Professor Gishangani has said, we had to look at all available options to ensure we resource the most important areas. One of them is connectivity. We committed that we will add additional 100,000 kilometers. This is a very ambitious commitment with huge impact to our economy. We are to get resources to do that, and we have made good progress. We said out of these 100,000 kilometers, government will do 52,000 kilometers, private sector will do about 48,000 kilometers. We are happy that we at about 2022 around 8,900 kilometers. We've increased this now approaching 14,000. An increase, we would say now we are approaching 10% of what we committed on the government side. Private sector is doing also very well. And when you talk about connecting, because it's not just about pulling this, we want to connect all public institutions to broadband connectivity. We want also to ensure we build the public Wi-Fi that we committed. We have now about 1,600 public Wi-Fis installed. We had a few challenges in some of them where we were installing in private premises, so we had challenges on power and a few issues. But as of today, we have about 400,000 Kenyans using these public Wi-Fi's daily, and in a month, almost 2 million Kenyans access this public Wi-Fi. Digital hubs is one of the most impressive work we've done. We have over 282 digital hubs established in the country, with many of our young people, especially in our TVET institutions, already working on it. We also work with our members of parliament, and we are very grateful for their commitment to establishment of digital hubs. They made an amendment to the National CDF law to provide for establishment of digital hubs and operationalization of those digital hubs. A number of members of parliament are already in the construction of the digital hubs, 1 to almost 6 in each of their constituencies. We've also committed to do pilot digital hubs, 2 in every county. As of now, around 33 centers of excellence are undergoing construction, and we've started to operationalize. Today, we were at the GPO post office to operationalize one we have dedicated to the digital media, where people with ideas and creatives can use. We will be going to Bungoma, and we'll be going to the rest of the country, so that in every county, one of the digital hubs will be dedicated to digital media. In terms of attracting, creating the country to be attractive for investment, we've talked about digital jobs. Our president has really done quite a lot going out of the country to engage the many players. And we've been able to see opening of monetization on our digital platform, Facebook, YouTube, where Kenyans can earn from their creations. It was not there before. It has happened. The other one, we've talked about the business process outsourcing. India and Philippines have been the world's capital. We are seeing slowly Kenya taking shape. Within 2 years, this January, we celebrated one big success, the world's #1 PPO in the world entered Kenyan market. So it means the work we've done in the last 2 years is bearing fruits. And they've started by setting up a space of 5,000 seat capacity. This is a very good indication that what we saw in that digital space can open opportunities is actually real. The other entities which have been in the market are also progressing, the CCI, SAMA, and many others. And we are seeing also Kenyans, the diaspora who are returning home. They are establishing their own digital hubs, and we are seeing them creating opportunities for our young people. One last important point in this point is that when we talk about digital superhighway, the last point is the device, the phone. And we committed to see how can we have affordable smartphone in Kenya. And also how can we create a new industry that can create jobs. And we are very happy. Private sector came together, and we have about 2.7 million phones now produced here in Kenya, something that never happened before. And if you check the Asian countries, what transformed those countries is the electronics industry. And what we can say is that we are entering that step. And we will see now the electronics industry will be able to access now the next level, even semiconductor industry. And we are laying a foundation of a real transformation of the country and unlocking the potentials of the digital and the tech space.
I think, Regina, before you go to Umi, just to reinforce what he is talking about, the semiconductors and so on, you also have to say that at the time we came in office, we had about 350 digitized services in government. And that had a bearing on revenue leakage. Today we have over 20,000, and people can come with specialized one. And let me tell you, one of the biggest achievements our ministry has done to help government is to create an atmosphere and a platform where revenue leakages go to the lowest point. So this is a big gain, because now public resources, this government is collecting more money than any other government that we have had since independence.
We'll pick it up because we're also going to discuss matters budget. Now, Honorable Umi, you've heard what the executive has said in terms of what they have done over the last 2 years. Now, I'd want to know, what is your role in Parliament now that the minority side, ODM, is part of the broad-based government, and how effective have you been on oversight?
Thank you. I think regardless of which side of government you belong to, the role of a legislator remains to be representation, legislation, and oversight. And that doesn't stop whichever side of the political divide you belong to. And a country without laws essentially is just banana republic. And if you look at countries that have fragile economies, it's because they have weak laws that people take advantage of, especially if those countries have resources. Take Kenya, for example. The reason we are able to really prosper, and I'll bring back the conversation to the digital and tech space, the reason why we are able to prosper is because we have good laws and good policies that are able to protect the interest of Kenyans. You would recall, I think in 2023, when WorldCoin entered the Kenyan market, and we are still growing as a country. And I say this because we have young people being the majority. The young people have key interest in data, key interest in any digital activity. We are headed to, we are not actually headed, we are actually in the fourth industrial revolution, which is tech. When we are in this space, a lot of money is being made in the tech space. A lot of emerging careers are also in the tech space. So I loved how Kenyans were quickly able to question Parliament and the ministry. What exactly are you guys doing about this? And as a committee, we sat down, summoned the WorldCoin and the people who were involved, and they're able to present what exactly they're doing. Our interest was, how does this benefit Kenyans? And when we realized it has no benefit to Kenyans, we were able to reject that particular proposal. I'm using that as an example to show the role that Parliament plays.
Is playing in that capacity.
Playing in that particular sector. The PS has talked about the digital economy and the digital hubs. countries like Germany have done incredible jobs. In fact, they're known to be very big in this particular sector. That's because they started off, if you look at the history, they started off with whatever Kenya is trying to achieve now, small hubs here and there. Because at some point, you cannot employ everybody. But with the digital space, you give people the freedom, give them enough internet, give them the devices at a cheap, affordable price. Nobody will come back to ask you for jobs. And I think that's where we are. We are in an emerging economy.
So you're saying we're on the right track?
We are on the right track because so many young people are making money online.
Okay.
And I look at this, even myself, even as a guardian and as a parent, before it used to be, oh, you need to be doctors, you need to be lawyers. Nowadays, you might find a TikToker making more money.
Now let's get to that point. I like where you've taken us because you've taken us rightly, squarely on the digital and ICT as a catalyst to socio-economic growth. But then there are issues around that, and we'll pick it up on the digital space. This one has come up in terms of data privacy, and I like that Parliament moved in to deal with WorldCoin. Can you confirm, Bwana PS, that our data is safe, given what we have seen? And on top of cyber security capacities, we've said that the digital platform is an enabler. Yet, those young people who found themselves disseminating information on those social platforms have come out, and human rights groups have come out and say people are disappearing. Are we saying one thing and doing the other? Let's start off with Bwana PS. Tanwi.
Data is becoming a key thing. They say now data is the new oil. They say also data gives the truth. It has all the information you need. So as a country, we have prioritized this space. And if you can see, we already have the relevant act that established the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner with a clear mandate on how to manage all matters to do with data, handling every stakeholder and requiring compliance. That is a foundational that's enabling our country. We've also worked to comply with global standards and global protocols and alliances that allows Kenya to work well. We are actually at the verge of achieving what we call the EU adequacy status, which will allow Kenyan companies to easily exchange and interconnect with European countries. It would be almost equivalent to Kenya being admitted to EU in a digital format. So in terms of legislative and regulatory structures to manage our data protection, we've done a good job. The digitization speed we've done is quite ambitious. As our colleague, my PS, has said here, PS, we've moved from 350 services to over 20,000 services. That's a very accelerated growth that many nations look and really admire. But at the same time, of course, there is risk in this space, just like in the physical space. And some of the risk is data, cybersecurity. And that's an area we are working very hard together with all the stakeholders to see that we put the necessary tools and systems to protect our assets. We are also looking at ensuring we have the human resource. PS talked about organizational structure, and the reforms that we are carrying out is to ensure we close any loopholes. We are enhancing training directly by ourselves as government and also with our technology partners, so that we equip our staff, our human resources, as a country, to be our first line of defense when it comes to the cyberspace. Shoring
capacity against the cyber securities.
Yes.
Yes, before we move further, we'll get to you, Prof. You've said that this is a space that creates jobs and such.
Yes.
But then we may have these data protection laws. But then I would want to hear your thoughts on the misuse of personal data in light of increased cases of abduction of social media users, because this is data that has been picked from their platforms and such.
Let me help.
Yeah, chip in on that.
To respond on that.
Yeah.
When it comes to, like I said, we are still evolving in terms of the laws and the policies. We are currently considering a private member bill that is going to address that particular issue, the cyber crime and the cyber issues. Everybody has a right to freedom, but there's a time when your freedom will also infringe on another person's right. And when that comes, that's when the law also comes into effect. We are still in the process of considering that particular law, whereby if it comes into force, then we are able to address these issues independently without politicizing anything. Where if somebody bullies you today on TV, they're able to respond to that particular or account for whatever they've done. The law therefore helps us manage and regulate whatever cases that arise. Whereby if the law is not available, then you are bound to fall for anything. The same way, just before we had the Sexual Offence Act that came into effect, we had so many cases of rape cases and sexual offence issues that could not be addressed because we didn't have a particular law. Now the topography is changing. So, like I said, whatever we are currently going through as a country, we are no longer a middle-income country. We are an emerging economy, a growing economy. So when you're growing as an economy, you're bound to also go through some key challenges. Currently, the cyber issue is very hot in Kenya. We saw what happened after the Gen Z protest.
Yes.
That means if anybody broke the law, they still have to be held accountable. My argument here is what Kenya has lacked and what might come out after the Gen Z protest is institutions that are effective. Independent institutions.
Institutions that are
specifically the rights that you have. You know what we currently have is the democratic right to exercise at the ballot. Institutions do not enjoy those particular. So we are now having institutionalized democracy, let me put it that way. Okay, where when institutions come into effect to exercise the law, we are not infringing on anybody's right.
We'll pick it up on rights. I can see, Prof, as you add, I want you also to consider, then what are you handling misinformation? We are in the AI domain, so to speak.
So one important point to talk about Kenya. One, we've done quite a lot of work. The network quality and experience in Kenya, in our towns and cities, is as good as any capital in the world. This is a very important point, that we have actually a huge high quality of infrastructure, and we thank our private sector. Is one of the leading. We thank our private sector for the good job they've done and writing also on the infrastructure government has put in place. Secondly, if you check today like social media, the digital platforms available, the ranking in the world, the usage, the duration Kenyans or people take on the internet, Kenya ranks actually #1. That tells you about our adoption of these digital platforms. So what we need to do, this is why we are enhancing trainings. That's why we are working with our young people in TVETs. That's why we are putting up these digital hubs, one in every ward, so that we expose our young people to the positive sides. We can use this digital infrastructure and the social media tools to talk about our country, how beautiful our country is, to attract investment and also to attract tourism. We can also use these digital platforms to speak about our SMEs, to speak about our small companies with great potential. We can speak about our products. We can speak about our artists. We can speak about the great things our country. So that is the direction we want to do. For misinformation and disinformation, we will work with the structures. Government must look forward to establishing new structures. Like in cybersecurity, we are looking forward to establish an agency dedicated to cybersecurity. We are also looking at establishing a data policy in the country, because now we need to look at this data so that we look at how we govern, how we exchange data in government, and how does private sector also interact with this data, because we must open also government data to the private sector, but in a secure way, and so that people do not also misuse that data. So education, awareness, and infrastructure to use it positively.
Okay. As before you take a break?
Yes, I just want to reiterate something. This question, Regina, keeps popping up. The question that, is our data safe?
Is our data safe? And because it has been misused?
Yes, no.
In some quarters.
Picking from what the PS left, the responsibility of taking care of data is partially government, but it's partially individualized. Because even when you expose your data, you can misuse your bank card and expose it to some people. Government has protected that, but you are the one who becomes an agent to give out your bank card and the people start using it. So therefore, the message you need to give out, especially from the point of view of media, is to tell people that there is no country where you can say it's 100% safe in data protection. What we need is responsible use of data by private citizens. It doesn't matter how much government does to secure data. Private citizens should also be retooled to know how to protect themselves.
Can it be a devil's advocate, PS? What if it's government or government apparatus that is supposedly take advantage of this data?
Let me tell you, that's the point I'm coming to.
Okay.
There are so many attacks which come even through CA. If you check, a lot of data came in.
It's reported,
you see, let me tell you, the argument is that government is the one hurting its citizens. Let us address this, because if we don't address this thing, it's going to be a cancer. Government has no business hurting the people that vote for it. And so it should go on record very clearly that this is never a government agenda. If today you work with government, you work with private sector, and you do things which are responsible, our people must start isolating individuals who do wrong things and say there is no government policy. We are advisors to the president. That is how our letter of appointment does. Tanui and myself have never at any one time been told we are working with the media. Nobody in government, not even the president, has ever told me to close a media house. He has never called me to say, go and control a media house, or go and expose somebody's data so that he's hijacked. Then he has never been told that. So these things you hear about them is partly the information you are getting. Every vote in this country, every voter matters. If you want votes, how can you be the one turning against the people? What do you gain from that?
That's a good question.
It's defeated. So the point you are asking, because it's asked quite often, I want to make it clear because I'm in charge of government communication. There is no policy in government to hurt citizens. Anybody who hurts citizens should take individual responsibility. Our president has given us very clear instructions to serve the people. In fact, he also says serve the people, not hurt the people.
Serve and not serve. And not hurt.
Not hurt people.
Right.
And that's what we're doing.
Let's serve our commercial break. We'll be right back. This is A Shift.
Global economy.
This is A Shift, and before we took that commercial break, we ended it on a note: we are here to serve and not hurt. But is it in this era of misinformation and disinformation? In the panel, we have none other than PS Broadcast and Telecommunications Edward Waswa Kisiangani, as well as PS in charge of ICT and Digital Economy, that is Engineer Tanui there. And last but not least, we have a Member of Parliament, nominated Member of Parliament, that is, we call her Umi for now, Haroon. Thank you very much for making time. So we are serving and not hurting. But then, how are we dealing with misinformation and disinformation? And I'm coming to one of the projects that has been highlighted under Better, and this is the housing. Affordable housing is one of the projects that has been identified as Better, but then there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation around it. How are you tackling it?
Yes, I think, let me go by that. With the new technologies, the challenge of new technologies is that individuals who invent these technologies sometimes are faster than governments. So it can, before you put rules to control it, it's already out there and it's being used either for good or for bad of society, the bad of the society. But now let's look at housing. Actually, by the way, the latest polls on housing is that when we started off, we were just about 18% rating approval for housing. Let me tell you, the latest polling, scientific polling, which I am privy to, is that now the rating has started rising. Just a few days ago, I toured a housing scheme, which is one of the projects the president did. That one, I think I can see it on the screen. That is Mukuru in the industrial area. Now, some of the information, the misinformation you hear about is that those houses don't exist. And people will tell you that the president is lying because those houses don't exist. I think the public who are listening to us and watching us as a cabinet, as principal secretaries know, they have seen me there. I went there specifically to tell the public that it is not a lie. So, we have had very responsible people in this country lying about that. Is that a lie or it is true? It is true, Regina. I have been there. Tanui has been there. So, when you keep telling a lie, the public is going to reach about, because very soon, those are about over 13,000 units, taking a lot of people in there with the supermarket and everything. The facilities are very good. Very soon, the president will be giving ownership titles to those new houses. I was there with you. The media were there. Several media people were there when I was touring that. You guys, do you think it's a lie? When now the president gives the titles and gives ownership to those houses, I think the whole story will tell by itself. It's not going to be a lie. So that is information practically, because, as I said, there are certain pressure points where people want to say a lie because a lie is sexy.
It works.
How long in Kenya can lies be sexy?
That is a good question.
It's going to be really bad.
That's a good question, because I'll take you back to what you said last year.
Before you go there, because you asked about misinformation.
Yes.
I want to go to another one, which is
I want to stay on housing first.
Yes, but I'll just give you another example of misinformation. Then we go back to the housing.
Okay. Go ahead.
Where we are. The previous government was employing only about 5,000 people in 5 years. Today, under the administration of President Ruto, we have almost 76,000 teachers who have been employed. In fact, in some villages, all graduates for B.Ed have been wiped out of the village. Nobody can get them. I don't know whether that is also a lie. Let's go back to housing. Now, I'm ready for you.
No, we get back to the misinformation and disinformation in this aspect, this way.
Yes.
We were aware when we got there, before we made it a legislation like a deductible, a tax deductible. There was the notion, and the members of the public were made to understand that once these monies are deducted, it's automatic for you to actually get a house. That was the information when the campaign was being run. But then when now we're already in this dispensation, the tune is changing. So from members of the public, it feels that lying by omission, by not giving the full details, that's one. Secondly, you mentioned a time like in December that you are working to get a synchronized communication strategy to tie in the loopholes on government policy. Yes. Maybe you can start from there. Tell us, what do you envision for this strategy and how far is it, so that we can lock out misinformation, disinformation, left, right, and center?
I think we shall handle it both with the Tanui.
Proceed.
But let me just make a highlight to the Tanui, because we have been working on this together with Tanui.
Right. Okay.
But I want to talk about the housing thing. That's why in this country we need to go back to the agenda. We need to go back to the bottom-up agenda, and even people should listen to some of the speeches our president gave before elections. The president has been very clear, and repeatedly. I don't care who you say is lying, but the president has been very clear that there are two aspects of housing. Not everybody will get a house in Kenya. So housing is about houses, so there are people who will get houses. They will get the studios, they will get 2-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom houses, like the ones I inspected a few days ago. But what you really need to think positively, and just before you came online, on air, Umi was saying that some very good things here are happening in Kenya. People are not realizing it. They don't realize them, but they will see the benefits a few years later. And this is one of them. Housing is about jobs. That is the emphasis that we are losing in this debate.
Okay.
That if you get a house, I went there and just witnessed what the thinking, the genius of the president was when he talked about housing is about jobs. At the entrance of the housing scheme project, there were mamas who were selling food. And the media people were there, they saw it. Then when you get inside, the lorry is coming in with sand. Those are jobs. But there were other people who are now planning designs for water and electricity. They are paying us. If today Kenyans are saying we don't want housing scheme, but we want jobs, young people who have graduated from TVET with certificates in electrical engineering, they have graduated because they know something about water technology.
Right.
Where will they get jobs if we cannot put up a housing scheme? This is the thinking. This naivety shouldn't really be promoted by people who are knowledgeable to say this housing is about houses. So you get into the house to do what? But for me, I'm looking at the young people along the streets who have qualification and who are going to get houses. So houses are about jobs. If we do these 10 projects in this country, how many kids, some kids, newly married people will get children and even take them through school without worrying about a job, because housing is about jobs. And Tanui will take through, he will do the digital part, it's jobs. After the house is completed, and then you put Wi-Fi there, then the young people who really want you are living within that house can start getting online jobs.
Okay.
This is the wider thinking about the housing scheme. And so why we are getting this misinformation is because people are not going back to the agenda of the president. Some didn't listen to what he was saying. So these people were telling you it was a lie. We were told we shall be given a house. If you don't get a house, you get a job.
All right, if you don't get a house, you get a job.
Yes.
Now, before we engage Engineer Tuni, there's also another issue and another area of better that has been affected by misinformation and disinformation, and that is health. Let's start off with you, Honorable Umi. What are members of parliament saying about SHA at the moment?
The truth of the matter is SHA is not working as it's meant to be. That's the plain truth. Where if you go to a hospital, your bill is 100,000, SHA can pay up to a certain point. The idea is good because initially NHIF was really mad with corruption and a lot of scandals, and it was technically a cash cow. With SHA coming to reinvent the wheel, it was a way to capture all these resources that are going to waste, because you would find with health being devolved, it was almost creating individual millionaires at the expense of the poor people. So SHA coming in, I was among the people who actually fought SHA and raised key points, because again, fighting without coming up with proposals is not helpful. And you might just sound like a populist. I hate to sound like a populist. For me, SHA is not working. We had a meeting with the SHA team and the stakeholders in Naivasha about 3 weeks ago, where members of parliament were able to say this and this and this and these areas are where it's not working. Because you would find it's working in some hospitals and it's not working in some hospitals. That comes down to how exactly can we then focus to make sure it works across. Priority going to key public hospitals. Devolved aspects of health is also creating the headache, because when the resources come down, you find blockages, and that's normal in any institution. So from where I sit, it's not working to the way it's supposed to work, but as members of parliament, we are really pushing the ministry to ensure that the feedback is heard, because we are assessing, we are doing the budget policy statements now. We have certain targets. Exactly how can we share recommendations so that they're able to improve on it? Then if it fails, we will then come back and say, okay, SHA is not working. What can we do to make sure it works?
Because as it stands, and you're aware, all of us who are registered under SHA, it means we cannot access health services in a private hospital. They have actually, stopped rendering services to shareholders, a private hospital.
For me, I actually support that.
You support that?
Because
I don't support that.
Okay, let's hear from Madam.
From where I sit, public hospitals are what runs our government now. It's where Mwananchi goes, Wanjiku go to get healthcare services. The same way public schools are the first entry point for our children's education. Where private sector comes in, everything gets commercialized. So if SHA will go big on supporting public institutions, where we had the maternal care projects for mothers in hospitals, where we had issues like cancer treatment centers, those are public institutions. If everything is privatized, then we should actually take the capitalistic aspect of it, privatize everything, including health, including education. But since we have public institutions, we have KNH, we have picture any level 5 hospital. SHA has to work in those hospitals first before it works in a private hospital. It's the same concept of giving condoms to people without giving sanitary pads. Sex is a leisure. Sanitary pads are a must. Use the same argument.
Or use the same argument.
Yeah. Yes,
it was to you.
Yes,
to use the same argument.
You see what? The bit that Umi says we must support public hospitals is correct. I agree with it. But I think as Kenyans, citizens of this country, we need to look at ourselves in the face. People begin by telling you SHA is not working. Was NHIF working? SHA came to solve a problem which has been with us for a very long time. And even the challenges it's facing, in my opinion, are temporary challenges. Today, and I want to put the two things together, the housing and the SHA, because you asked the questions around the two issues. Some of the people who could be against this SHA and the senders of misinformation in this country are people who have houses, and you meet them on the streets and say, why is President Ruto putting up houses? Where will our tenants, the tenants we have, where shall we get tenants? Shame on them. There are people who suffer under landlords. Now, there are also private hospitals who, as Umi has put it, had colluded with the NHIF team to defraud government. You go into hospital, they ask you what is your insurance, and all your money is washed out from one admission, and then they wait for government to do what you call your ex gratia, so that they again pick the money. Now, they don't want SHA to come, because one of the things they are fearing SHA will do, it is going to re-empower public hospitals, and the government is going to put money there, control the spending of money, which they don't want. So these kind of things also become a source of challenge. Who is jamming systems? Who doesn't want it to work? Really, if you don't want things to work, they will not work. So there are people who don't want the housing scheme to work. There are people who don't want the superhighway to work. There are people who
so you're saying they're naysayers. But then how are you working to correct this mistrust that Kenyans have, especially on those two projects that you have mentioned?
I've told you, in the housing scheme, it's already rising. People have seen houses because they thought in Mazinga Umbwe there are no houses. The houses are now being seen, they are being built. The SHA thing is going to work.
It's going to work.
It's going to
but
work.
We have time.
But the challenges that we have,
yes. Do we have time for the patients who are seeking these services and not getting them?
To talk about our midterm.
And
my brother Tanui has just talked about putting structures in place. We have dismantled a major structure that was a source of government revenue leakage. And now we're setting up a new system that attends to, and people don't want even to mention this, Regina, that SHA it has 3 dockets that were never there in NHIF. The first thing is primary health care. It was never there. Nobody would care about, the people wait for you to go to hospital. Primary health care makes sure you don't go to hospital. That's the philosophy. The second thing is, if you can't pay, then you are sick, you have malaria, you have diseases that they are treatable, then you go to hospital, you can't pay, somebody will pay for you. And the people who will pay for you are people like Tanuya and myself, because if you can't pay, then I must be deducted more money. We are paying more money as civil servants to make sure that we move away from the 320, somebody earning 1 million shillings, 500,000, and he's paying 320, another one 20,000 is paying 320. Now, so the whole thing was thin. The fund was very thin. Now the last part was this terminal diseases like diabetes and so on. That one again, people sold their land to take their loved ones to India and then deal with their diseases, and then even the loved ones would die. Regina, that systematic thinking about what ails our health sector is great, because we have a philosophy and now we can do funding at different levels. There was nothing like that under NHIF.
So we will get there. Now, as we come to a close, we find ourselves in the budget making process, and we have crucial lessons that we have learned from the 2024-2025 budget. You've mentioned that this is something that the parliamentarians have sat down and talked about, how to improve healthcare. What lessons, as a legislator, have you learned from the finance bill, rejected bill, 2024-2025, now that we find ourselves in the budget making process? As we come to a close, you can also add on to something. Yeah, housing.
Because, when many of us came to Nairobi from hub country, and you remember the first location, many people start their life in Kayole, Umoja, Kibra, and when you see the current housing coming, I'm happy. My cousins, my children, if they were to live, they will start in a very decent place. That's one of the purposes of this housing. The other, in addition to jobs, this is an opportunity actually to industrialize our country. Today you have a government doing 300,000 units of housing in a span of a period of time. Previously, which I chair now the sector team in infrastructure, the last 3 years we had only built 1,000 units of houses. Now we are talking about 300,000. So it means an investor can come to Kenya and has a clear demand. He can say, I want to manufacture lifts in Kenya. I need a demand of 250 lifts a year, and that demand can be guaranteed. So housing is also a means that will spur industrialization in our country. We will be able to manufacture things, and you have a market for it. And that is where additional jobs will be created. Many years to come, this housing would be one of the greatest things that will be pointed as what transformed the direction of the country. And many of us who are contributing by paying this tax for housing will be actually the heroes. When we look from the independence to those who worked during independence to bring independence, probably the next generation is that generation who contributed to building these houses, because it is going actually to transform the direction of our country. A guy doing diploma in civil engineering can be guaranteed he will get a job now, because there is almost 300,000 houses under construction. So you are guaranteed of a job. There is industries that will take off. Yeah. We will be able to create and change the direction of the country. On the health side, one of the things, he talked about primary health. What is going to be very important is now we will have clear data about our country. We will have data about issues, what are people suffering. We will be able to address those issues because it is feasible. And the other thing is prevention. In the long run, many of the diseases that cost us a lot of money will actually be addressed at an early stage. Many of us wait until we are very, very sick, when it's already so expensive. But if we are able to address these issues at an early stage, then overall the cost of healthcare in the long run is going to go down. So the things being done, the two things, is actually some of the things that will be defined in 15, 20 years would be the things that change the direction of our country.
Good. Now let's look at the budget making process, because we also, when you're talking about health, there's a new development with the new regime that has taken place in America. We have the Global Fund will not be having the funding as such. Is this something that Parliament is looking at when you're talking about Taifa Care coming to ensure that it delivers universal health care? How are we looking at it, including also the lessons that we have learned from the previous finance bill? Let's start off with you, Madam Umi.
This is something I was debating during the Munich Security Conference, and the question was raised. I think what the global health and the USAID funding was doing was good. And the idea was to support to come in. You remember back in the 90s, HIV/AIDS was it was almost like a life sentence. And USAID came in to support the funding, because at that time, most of these countries were still developing. As we speak now, we, as a country, with the taxes that have been collected and the targets that we have every financial year, I think the exchequer can be able to come in
manage
to support
the disease burden.
It doesn't mean that we are still a country that fully relies on aid. That is not the picture that we want to give as a country. And that's why immediately the fundings withdrawals were announced, you had Treasury communicate that they can still be able to support whatever that has been withdrawn, meaning we are in a good place as a country, and that's a positive thing. Aid in itself should not be considered a charity. It is an investment towards this country, because when Kenya gets a certain donation from these UN agencies or the USAID, it doesn't mean that it is, you know, a charity that they're giving us. We are still taking care of refugees as a country. We are a host community. We have a lot of resources that we are offering. So it's a symbiotic relationship where each country is able to develop, to grow together. And it's also a diplomatic interest. Yeah. South Africa didn't flinch when the money went. So I don't think Kenya is struggling for them to start crying about. We are doing well as a country.
Good. And on that note, we in the budget making process, we all saw what happened last year. We are in this process. How are we going to handle that, given that we've already seen, you know, the remnants of the Gen Z protest? Let's start off with PS Kisingani here.
You know, I have so many words, but
keep them minimal. I
just wanted to tell you something that Tanui was telling you, and you know, we might have forgotten it on the housing thing. I just want to tell you, we are now putting what you call standard doors, standard windows, and that is what will create an industry around there. So you can say, I'm coming into Kenya to invest so that I can produce first phase 1 million windows of the same size. And then that creates a lot of jobs. Or sockets for electricity and so on. When you go to Europe, you see even the toilets. From Switzerland to France, you'll see the toilets look the same in the hotel. So, but with regard to the budget making process, in fact, for me, for the Americans to do what they are doing is a blessing in disguise. There are people, whenever we get aid from other countries, we think that other people are born to give us aid, but that is other people's tax money. And that's why in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, there were medium-term goals by the president, the 5 pillars, which you know very well about. But there were also immediate ones, expanding the tax base, stabilizing the foreign exchange, fighting hunger, so that the food security is ensured, among other things. Those are the things that we're doing. So what we really need to do is to be a little more imaginative. In our country, we have about 900 civil servants, 900,000 civil servants, with about only 2.5 also salaried people working in the private sector. That closes into about just 3.5 million people out of 51 million people to carry the tax burden in a large way, a predictable way, because you know they have a pay slip. It is not possible to sustain that. So the thinking in government, led by His Excellency the President, is to think outside the civil servant bracket. Kenya has to decide to develop itself with local resources or look for expensive money and suffer forever. Okay. We have suffered for 60 years for borrowing money. Some of the debts that we are paying today were taken by our forefathers in the 1960s and 70s, and we have not stopped paying. There were some were on 40-year lease, 50. But now, if these guys stop, does life stop because the Americans are doing it?
It definitely doesn't.
I think the realistic thing for us to do is if we can expand this economy and create more resources, we can buy those drugs from America directly. They give us the drugs, we give them the money, and we go away.
Now, PS, as you come to a close, we'd want to know, can we address what has appeared as a grey area between the executive and the legislature during the budget making process? Because this is what we witnessed last time.
No.
As we come to a close.
No, I think there is no lacuna. There is no conflict between the two. Remember, they have certain constitutional duties. Umi and the team are supposed to oversight the executive. And so they can't pamper the executive. And the executive is not looking to be pampered. And also the executive is not looking for unreasonable support from what? From the legislature. So what the legislature is supposed to do, as Umi has said, we have thought about it through Munich and other places we have been discussing. They can say now, for us as the legislature, this is what we think should be done to fill in the gap that has been left by the end of aid from the Americans. And then when they suggest that, you remember the budget making process is a long process. Umi, it is not, it's just beginning. It will go, and even when it is read in June, it will still be subjected to Parliament for certain changes. Okay. So I think the process, let it go on. Nobody should talk about the legislature as interfering. Let them go pick their pit. But for us in the executive, we also have some ideas on what we should do. And then we shall reach some kind of balance so there is no crisis between the executive in Kenya and the legislature.
So no crisis. Now,
yes.
This will leave PS Tanui to give us closing remarks. We are at midterm. Have you changed your mind? You gave the government performance 7 out of 10, having heard from Wanjiko and also the banter that we've had here on set. Are you still sticking with 7 out of 10, or has it increased or decreased?
I'm still sticking with 7%, and I believe the days to come we are going to be impactful, because we look at commitments we made about digital hubs. We are confident with the remaining time we will go a long way towards achieving the commitments we did. Enhancing connectivity, we will also equally go a long way to address that. On digital jobs and unlocking opportunities, we are very happy to see world's #1 being in Kenya in BPO. We believe also the technology companies setting base in Kenya will continue. We saw Amazon Web Services bring their development center in Kenya, starting with IIN top engineers of 20, now at 200. So I am very confident on the foundations that we have laid, that it will take us to the next level and unlock more opportunities for our people. So I believe next time maybe we're having conversation in 6 months or so, we should be going to 8% in terms of our achievement and our rating.
Okay. Madam Umi, 10 seconds. Then we come with PS, we close.
My closing remarks?
Yes, closing remarks.
Okay. I think because the debate was specific to the sector.
On better, yeah.
I think from where I sit, I have really seen the work that the ministry has done in terms of digitalizing. We have handled a lot of programs that they've brought to us. The Jitume, like I said when I was starting, the previous regime had something called Ajira. In the entire northern region, Ajira had not reached. But as we speak, we have a fully equipped Jitume digital hub in the Northern Polytechnic, which is located in Garissa, serving the entire region. And that's because I sit in the committee. I wrote a letter to the ministry. PS Tanui was able to immediately respond, and we got that fully equipped with Wi-Fi. I think the buck also stops with the leadership. We are there to purely serve the interest of the public. So when we get feedback that 1, 2, 3 things are not working, we come in swiftly to address that. And I think that's what I did from where I sit.
The willingness to listen and address.
To be also, the whole concept of servant leadership, but I wouldn't get philosophical.
Yes.
But we are headed in the right direction.
So you stick with the 7 out of 10?
I'll stick with that, and I'll emphasize especially on digital programs. We have emerging careers. We have jobs that are not the ordinary ones, where your mom will tell you, can you go to school and be a doctor? No. Skills, that's where the money is at. There are many people with degrees, many people with PhDs, but the job market keeps shrinking because we are headed to a world where everything is going to be tied to skills. And when I mentor young people, I tell them, picture, because I've seen the refugee life. We've hosted refugees in my county. Picture if you're a refugee. What is the one job that can be able to give you bread on your table when you've all become refugees? Assuming your country has collapsed, you've been put in camps. Is it the politician that will make money? Or is it the Mtua steamer that will make money? Or is it the teacher that will make money? Skills.
Skills. I'd want to end at that point. Just a second, sir. Can you make it at a second? We're closing the shift.
I think Kenya has shifted. And as you can see from this debate, we have shifted to the right path. So what I call upon everybody in this country is to exercise enough patriotism by associating with this transformation that is taking place under the president, to support the president and government, so that we lay a good foundation for the transformation of our country. Kenya is on the right path and in the hands of the right leadership.
All right. That is it. We have shifted and we are taking you back to studio for business as well as sports. Remember, my guests have been none other than Madam Honorable Nominated Member of Parliament from Garissa, Umer Harun as well. We call her, we refer to her as Umi. We have Engineer John Tanu, who is in charge of ICT and digital economy. And last but not least, that is PS in charge of broadcast and telecommunications, Edward Waswa Kisangani. Over to you for business and sports.